When you think of Adele, the image that comes to mind is usually her powerhouse voice, her heartbreaking ballads, and her incredible rise from a working-class girl in London to one of the most successful artists in the world. But behind the spotlight, the fame, and the awards lies a story so eerie, so unsettling, that it sounds like something ripped straight from a ghost story. A story that Adele herself admitted left her so terrified, she packed up and moved almost overnight. This isn't just about a creaky old house or an overactive imagination. This is the story of the haunted mansion Adele rented in England, a sprawling, historic property so unsettling that the singer refused to stay there alone. For someone as grounded and relatable as Adele, who doesn't usually lean into superstition or melodrama outside her lyrics, the fact that she openly admitted to being haunted by this house makes the story all the more chilling. It all began in 2012, when Adele had skyrocketed to global superstardom after the success of her second album, 21. She was newly famous, adjusting to the whirlwind of celebrity, and like many stars who suddenly find themselves with wealth beyond imagination, she looked for a quiet, private place to escape the chaos. That retreat came in the form of a 7 million country mansion in West Sussex, a sprawling 10-bedroom home surrounded by acres of countryside, complete with a swimming pool, helipad, and staff quarters. On paper, it was idyllic. The perfect refuge for a star who wanted privacy, security, and peace. But from the moment Adele stepped inside, she admitted that something about the house felt wrong. The mansion was enormous, filled with dark corridors, creaking staircases, and empty rooms that seemed to swallow sound. It was a place drenched in history, centuries-old history, to be exact. The kind of place where you could almost feel the weight of lives lived long before you ever set foot inside. And for Adele, that sensation became overwhelming. In interviews at the time, she revealed that she felt uneasy in the house almost immediately. She said she constantly felt watched, as though someone, or something, was following her from room to room. She told friends that doors creaked open on their own, shadows shifted in empty hallways, and strange noises echoed through the mansion late at night. At first, Adele chalked it up to the quirks of an old house. After all, country estates in England are notorious for being drafty, creaky, and a little spooky. But the experiences grew harder and harder to explain away. One of the things that terrified her most was the sound of footsteps. Adele said she heard them often, slow, deliberate footsteps echoing through the mansion when she knew she was alone. She described lying awake at night, straining her ears, and realizing that the noises weren't random creaks. They were rhythmic, like someone pacing the hallways outside her bedroom. Sometimes she swore she heard them following her, room to room, as though the unseen presence was keeping her company, whether she wanted it or not. The fear became so overwhelming that Adele refused to stay in the mansion by herself. She hired an additional bodyguard, not just for security against fans or intruders, but specifically to protect her from whatever she believed was haunting the house. Imagine that, one of the most famous singers in the world, living in a mansion worth millions, too frightened to sleep without someone watching over her. Friends who visited the house said Adele was visibly unsettled. She joked about it sometimes in interviews, saying things like, "It gives me the creeps," but behind the humor was genuine fear. She told The Sun that she heard things at night that no one could explain. At one point, she was so terrified that she and her then-boyfriend Simon Konecki moved into the smaller, staff quarters rather than staying in the main house. Think about that, choosing to live in a cramped cottage rather than your multi-million-dollar mansion, simply because you couldn't bear the feeling of what lurked inside. Paranormal experts weighed in at the time, pointing out that many English countryside estates have dark histories. Some were built on old battlefields, others on land tied to centuries of violence, loss, or tragedy. With houses that large and that old, it's not unusual for locals to whisper about hauntings. And Adele's mansion was no different. Stories circulated that the property had once been a convent, and before that, an estate tied to nobility whose family line was marked by betrayal and scandal. Of course, much of this remains rumor, but the very idea that the walls of the house carried centuries of secrets added to the mystique. What made Adele's story even creepier was how quickly she acted. She didn't try to push through, she didn't laugh it off, and she didn't wait to see if the activity would fade. Within months, Adele abandoned the mansion altogether. She packed up and moved out, leaving behind a house she once thought would be her sanctuary. For someone who grew up in modest apartments in London, the chance to live in such luxury should have been a dream come true. But for Adele, it was a nightmare she couldn't shake. And fans noticed. The story spread like wildfire, with tabloids calling it Adele's haunted mansion, and fans speculating about what she'd experienced. Some believed the stress of fame amplified her fears, that she was projecting her anxieties about her sudden success onto the house. Others were convinced she'd truly experienced something paranormal, pointing to her specific claims about footsteps, feelings of being watched, and doors opening on their own. Many fans admitted they weren't surprised. After all, some of the most famous haunted houses in England share strikingly similar stories: footsteps in the night, ghostly apparitions, and oppressive atmospheres that drive even the bravest residents away. What's perhaps most chilling is that Adele's haunted house story fits into a larger pattern of celebrities encountering the supernatural. From Ariana Grande's infamous demon encounter in a cemetery to Miley Cyrus fleeing a haunted London apartment, the world of the rich and famous seems no more immune to ghosts than anyone else. If anything, their stories seem amplified, perhaps because old mansions and glamorous estates often carry more history, and with history comes baggage. For Adele, the haunted mansion remains a chapter of her life she rarely revisits. After leaving, she eventually settled into more modern properties, homes without the centuries-old shadows of England's past. It seems she learned her lesson. Sometimes bigger and older isn't better, especially when it comes with the price of restless nights and a constant sense of being watched. But the story lingers. Fans still bring it up in forums and interviews, fascinated by the idea of Adele, a woman whose voice commands stadiums, being reduced to fear by something unseen. Some even speculate that her experiences in that house influenced the darker, more introspective tones of her music around that time. Was Skyfall, released later that same year, touched by the eerie mood of those haunted nights? We can't say for sure, but it's tempting to wonder. What we do know is this: Adele believed she lived in a haunted house, and the fear was strong enough to uproot her life. Whether it was truly paranormal activity or the weight of stress and fame manifesting in eerie ways, the fact remains that this wasn't a tabloid invention or a fan rumor. Adele herself admitted it, openly and without shame. And that's what makes this story so compelling. The haunted mansion Adele fled from stands as a reminder that no amount of fame, money, or success can protect you from the things that go bump in the night. And for Adele, those things were terrifying enough to send her running. So the question is, if you had the chance to spend a night in that same mansion, knowing Adele herself wouldn't, would you take it? Or would you, like her, pack your bags and leave before the shadows could whisper your name?